The rain fell heavy that night, a restless storm drumming on the old tin roof of the wildlife rescue. Inside, the nursery lights burned low, a warm island in the middle of a cold, black sea, and on a frayed wool blanket in the corner, a golden Labrador lay curled around 3 tiny, striped bodies. Her eyes were tired, but they glowed with a quiet strength. And those tiger cubs, orphaned just days ago, slept with their heads tucked into her fur, safe for the first time since their world had fallen apart. If anyone had walked in at that moment, they might have thought this was just a mother and her litter. But this was something rarer, something almost impossible. This was love, finding a way. The tiger cubs had come into the rescue 3 nights earlier. Their mother had been killed by poachers deep in the forest. The ranger who found them said they were crying so hard he could hear them over the sound of the rain. They were barely 2 weeks old, too young to eat solid food, too fragile to survive the cold without a mother's warmth. The rescue staff did everything they could, heat lamps, formula, swaddling them in blankets. But nothing worked. The cubs whimpered all night, refused to eat. Their tiny bodies trembled, losing strength by the hour. The head vet, Dr. Sharma, shook his head grimly. They're fading. They need a mother, not just a caretaker. That's when someone thought of Daisy. Daisy was the rescue's gentle Labrador, a retired therapy dog who had spent years comforting sick children in hospitals. She was calm, patient, and carried a kind of warmth that made even the most frightened animals relax. But there was something else. Only a week earlier, Daisy had lost her own litter. Complications during birth had taken her puppies, and since then, she had been quiet, wandering the halls like a shadow. Some of the staff worried the loss had broken her spirit, but maybe, just maybe, she still had love to give. That night, they brought Daisy into the nursery. The cubs were huddled together, mewling softly, their ribs showing through their fur. At first, Daisy just stood there, ears tilted forward, watching them. She sniffed the air, then stepped closer. And then, something happened. Her body softened. Her tail began to sway gently. She lay down beside them, curling her large body into a warm circle, and nudged the smallest cub closer with her nose. The cub gave a weak cry, and then, for the first time in days, it stopped crying. It pressed its head against Daisy's chest, listening to her steady heartbeat. One by one, the others followed, crawling into her fur. Daisy licked their tiny faces, as if claiming them. The staff stood in stunned silence. They knew in that moment the cubs had found their mother. From that night on, Daisy never left the nursery. She kept the cubs warm, letting them press against her belly even though she had no milk. The staff bottle-fed them every few hours, but Daisy stayed by their side, licking away the milk from their whiskers, keeping them clean like a real tiger mom would. When one whimpered, she would nudge it closer. When they tried to crawl away, she would gently herd them back. She didn't care that they were different, that their paws were bigger, their fur striped, their tiny roars unlike any sound a dog had ever heard. To Daisy, they were hers, and to the cubs, she was safety. A week later, something magical happened. The smallest cub, the one who had been the weakest, pounced clumsily on Daisy's paw. Daisy froze, then gave a playful nudge with her nose. That was all it took. Suddenly, the nursery was alive with squeaks and growls, the cubs tumbling over each other, batting at Daisy's tail. She played gently, letting them climb on her, pretending to be caught when they tried to wrestle. It was the first time anyone had seen the cubs act like cubs, not frightened, grieving orphans. When the weather cleared, Daisy led them into the small enclosed yard. The grass was wet, the air fresh with the smell of rain. The cubs stepped cautiously at first, their tiny paws sinking into the mud. Daisy stayed close, her body like a golden shield. When one stumbled, she nudged it up again. When another growled at a butterfly, Daisy sat patiently, letting them discover the world at their own pace. For the first time, Their future didn't look so fragile, but everyone knew this couldn't last forever. The cubs were growing fast, their legs stronger, their teeth sharper. One day, they would have to be released to a sanctuary where they could live like wild tigers. For Daisy, that day came too soon. She lay watching as the staff loaded the now healthy cubs into a transport crate, each one looking back at her with wide, confused eyes. She didn't whine. She didn't bark. She just watched, her tail still, her head slightly tilted, as if memorizing their faces. When the door shut, the room felt colder. Weeks later, the rescue received photos from the sanctuary. The cubs were thriving, bigger, stronger, their stripes deep and bold. But in every photo, there was something small but unmistakable. The way they cuddled together when they slept, the way they playfully nipped at each other's ears, the way their eyes softened when they looked at the camera. They had learned love from Daisy, and that kind of love never fades. On quiet nights, Daisy still sleeps in the nursery. The blanket in the corner is empty now, but she rests there anyway, as if waiting. Maybe one day, another lost soul will need her warmth. Maybe not. But somewhere out there, 3 young tigers are prowling through tall grass under the moonlight, carrying with them the memory of a golden Labrador who once held them close and taught them, before they even knew the wild, what it felt like to be safe. Because sometimes, family isn't who you're born to. It's who holds you when the world falls apart.